With Spider-Man Brand New Day releasing later this month, Spider-Man has never been bigger. Between the comics, games, animated series, and now 9 live-action movies, there's never been a better time for LEGO to finally give Spider-Man his own full-scale adventure. And honestly, I think the blueprint perfectly already exists. Because if you've watched this channel before, you know how much I love LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. And that's actually the game I'm taking a lot of inspiration from today. I'm going to explain why I think a LEGO Spider-Man game would be perfect, what my dream story would look like, who I'd make playable, the DLC I'd want to see, and later in this video, I'll also be reacting to some of your ideas for a LEGO Spider-Man game. So, let's get into it. Spider-Man deserves his own LEGO game. Spider-Man has one of the greatest rogues galleries in comic book history. Batman usually gets all the praise for his villains. But honestly, Spider-Man isn't far behind. He's got villains like Green Goblin, Dr. Octopus, Venom, Sandman, Mysterio, Lizard, Kraven, Electro, Vulture, Kingpin, even a villain like Mr. Negative is popular. The list just keeps on going. One of the reasons LEGO Batman games work so well is because Batman has so many iconic villains to build levels around, and Spider-Man has that exact same advantage going for him. Every boss fight could feel unique, and every chapter could introduce another classic villain from Spider-Man's history. If LEGO actually made this game, I'd take a lot of inspiration from LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. That game does an amazing job mixing together Batman's entire history instead of just focusing on one movie or one version of the character. And that's exactly what I'd want for Spider-Man. Instead of adapting one movie, I'd combine the best moments from all 3 live-action Spider-Man series, the Tobey Maguire trilogy, Andrew Garfield's Amazing Spider-Man movies, and Tom Holland's MCU trilogy. Imagine playing LEGO versions of iconic moments like the train sequence from Spider-Man 2, the clock tower battle from the Amazing Spider-Man 2, the Mysterio illusion scene, the apartment fight with Green Goblin. There's just so many incredible moments that I would like to see all fit into one original LEGO story. And just like LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, I'd create an original story featuring 6 major villains working together. I'd like for them to include as much villains as possible, but I'd like to see the big finale of this game featuring 6 major villains working together in the sense of the Sinister Six. And if they do 6 chapters just like LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, you can make each villain the major villain of each chapter in this game. That way it feels like it's building up to something and keeping things connected with the Sinister Six slowly building. But now let's get into talking about the playable character roster in this game. I'd have 7 main playable heroes throughout the story, just like LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Obviously, we'd have to start with Spider-Man. He's the face of the franchise. That's a no-brainer. Then I'd say Miles Morales as well. He's become way too important to leave out, and his powers would make gameplay feel completely different from Spider-Man, with him being able to go invisible and his electric blast he could do. And next I'd throw a villain into the playable character roster, that being Venom. And I'd have him begin as a villain throughout this game's story. But over time, I'd honestly have him become more of an anti-hero. You could do this by making him Flash Thompson's Agent Venom, or you could do what the Venom movies kind of did with Eddie Brock, or you could kind of do something with Harry Osborn like Spider-Man 2 did with his approach on Agent Venom. I think a Venom character arc would be one of the coolest parts of this game, and I'd love to see him as a playable character. Then I'd include Black Cat. I'd basically make her Spider-Man's version of Catwoman from LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight. Sometimes she helps, sometimes she's working for herself, sometimes you don't even know whose side she's on. That unpredictability would make her one of the most fun characters in the story. A character who I'm kind of on the fence of including here would be Iron Man. I know some people might say Spider-Man should stand on his own, and I agree for the most part, but Iron Man played such a huge part in Spider-Man Homecoming and the MCU trilogy that I think he deserves to kind of be involved here. But if you want, we could sub him out and make Harry Osborn his own playable character here. That way we can make Harry Osborn as Green Goblin a playable character. A big thing LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight was almost kind of lacking for a lot of people was the lack of playable villains. And I think if you want to make it work story-wise, having Harry Osborn as a playable Green Goblin just like he is in the Tobey Maguire trilogy works absolutely perfectly. So I'm on the fence between having him or Iron Man here. I'd let the comments decide. And like it or not, Mary Jane would also play an important role throughout the story, and I'd like to see her as a playable character. Those missions with her in Spider-Man 2 are honestly pretty fun, and they did a way better job of making you play as Mary Jane in Spider-Man 2 than they did within the first Spider-Man game. Even if she isn't constantly fighting, she's just too important to Spider-Man's story to leave out. And finally, I want to touch in more of the Marvel Universe, and I feel like this is some less controversy picks over Iron Man. I'd include both Daredevil and the Human Torch. These are two heroes that are constantly crossing paths with Spider-Man in the comics. Instead of just appearing in cutscenes, I'd love for both of them to join Spider-Man during different chapters throughout the campaign. In particular with Daredevil, I really think it'd work great if you made Kingpin the main villain of one of the chapters in this game, because Kingpin is always on the fence of being a Spider-Man villain and a Daredevil villain, so he'd work great here. I also just think having these two would make each mission feel fresh while also introducing even more Marvel characters to this world. And even after the main story would eventually end, this game has so much DLC potential. The first one I'd make is a Spider-Verse expansion featuring Spider-Gwen. She can bring her own unique animations, abilities, and missions inspired by the Spider-Verse films. Then, I'd absolutely make a Spider-Noir DLC. Imagine an entire black and white LEGO city with detective-style missions, classic villains, and Spider-Noir as the main playable character. Those two expansions alone would give players a completely different experience after finishing the main campaign. And the open world of this game would honestly be incredible. Swinging around a massive LEGO New York, finding hidden backpacks, stopping random crimes, unlocking classic Spider-Man suits, completing side missions for heroes across the city, the possibilities are endless. What I'm talking about here is basically what they did with LEGO Batman. LEGO Batman took a lot of inspiration from the Arkham games. Why not take so much inspiration from the Spider-Man games here with this LEGO Spider-Man game idea? But before I get into my final thoughts, let's check out some of your ideas for what you'd want in a LEGO Spider-Man game. Insomniac combat in Miles Morales and later chapters when Peter is older. I completely agree with this. Insomniac has perfected the way I would like a Spider-Man game to be, and having that in LEGO form would just be perfect. Miles Morales has just transcended popularity so much. He's honestly one of the most popular Marvel characters already, and he's a great legacy character. He needs to be in this game if it ever happens. Prod BRCN said, playable villains, a Venom and Black Spider-Man sequence. I completely agree. I threw in some playable villains in there if they want to go with the 7-character roster, but honestly, if you just included all of Spider-Man's rogues gallery as playable characters throughout this, that would be awesome as well. And he's not the only person who said this. Mr. Snowman 1678 said playable villains as well. So this is clearly a high demand if we ever get this. God Games and Geekiness 6893 said, I honestly think the formula should be the same, minus movie adaptations. They could use some character backstories from the film version, like Norman getting into a tank to turn it into Green Goblin, but they should be based off the big events in the comics. Origin, Sinister Six, If This Be My Destiny, etc. The suits would be great, but it might be hard to differentiate powers with other Spider people. If they do a 7-character roster, they should do Jean DeWolf in place of Commissioner Gordon. Lastly, there needs to be levels from the villain's perspective like in LEGO Batman 1. Even if they are short, that way we can unlock villains as playable characters if they go that route. Love this comment, you said lots of great ideas, but I do think this game would just be naturally more movie focused. The general public is more movie oriented. That's why LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight took a lot more inspiration from the movies. They still adapted some stuff from the animated series and some stuff from the comics, but I do think this would lean a lot more movie focused. But I completely agree. I would love to see some of this cool comic book stuff that you mentioned. And I love the idea of missions from the villain's perspective. If we go with the Sinister Six route of having the main villain from each chapter join the Sinister Six, we could get missions from each villain joining the Sinister Six and the plotting of that happening after we beat the story of this game. I think that'd be really cool. Quick Brick Games, goated YouTuber by the way, go check him out. He said, full recreation of the Raimi trilogy. I know this will be popular. The Raimi trilogy is incredibly popular, and that's why I included it in here. I like how they did stuff in LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, kind of mixing in the trilogies. But honestly, if they did just a full-on Tobey Maguire game, that could be cool too. Wanks said, revamped and fully explorable New York City, plus day and night cycle, and bring back the character customization. On a comment on one of my past LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight videos, someone mentioned the idea of a customizable Batsuit creator. Imagine a customizable spider suit creator. There's literally so much possibilities here that you can make it fit into the game lore-wise even, with the Spider-Verse. If they did this even as a DLC for this game, with you getting to make your own Spider-Man that is part of the Spider-Verse, kind of like in LEGO DC Supervillains where you create your own custom character, that's part of the story. That'd be cool if they did that as well, where you make your own custom character, but it's part of the Spider-Verse. GoGG said, haven't really thought about it too much, but I've got a couple ideas. First off, this comment's just pretty funny because this is a long comment, so you've clearly thought about it. But anyways, let's read some of your ideas. More superheroes in the open world, as if it's sort of a LEGO Marvel Superheroes 3 from Spidey's perspective. Marvel is at its best when it's focused on interactions between its characters. See, this is why I like to include characters like Daredevil or Human Torch or even like Iron Man. These are notable characters that have played parts in Spider-Man's story throughout the years, from both film to television to comics, so I would really like to see some more of that. Less focus on the movies, more focus on the canon events. Across the Spider-Verse showed us a few, but having a story that includes most of it, not all of those key parts of his backstory. Spider-Man No More, Symbiote Arc, lifting up the rubble from Amazing Spider-Man 33, and possibly even George Stacy's sacrifice, Gwen's death, and Superior Spider-Man. Hopefully not One More Day though. Yeah, this could actually be really cool. I like the canon event idea. I think that would also be sick if they did the Spider-Verse DLC, if you were jumping from universe to universe, seeing a lot of these canon events throughout that DLC. I actually like this idea quite a bit. Uncle Ben's death being covered in the opening cutscene, not leveled. Similar to most modern adaptations. MCU, Friendly Neighborhood, Insomniac, Spider-Verse. I think this is exactly how it would be. The opening cutscene would actually probably be him getting bit by the spider, and then it would transition into Uncle Ben's death. The same way that in LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight, you very quickly go from young Bruce at home with the Waynes to the death of his parents to him heading off to go be trained by Ra's al Ghul. So I think that is actually very similar to how this game would start. And moving on to one last comment here from William Anderson. They said, the biggest problem is the co-op. Who's going to be beside Spider-Man in every mission, and how can they make it feel fun and natural like in LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight? And you bring up a very interesting point. That's why I think it's kind of vital to have people like Harry Osborn and Mary Jane playable. Harry Osborn, you could have him be playable, which then leads into him potentially going down the Venom route, or to him potentially going down the Green Goblin route. So I definitely think having them set up like that would be a good thing, the way to start things off. But honestly, maybe introduce a character like Black Cat early into the game, or as some other comments have said, maybe Captain Stacy could be a playable character in this game to kind of play that Commissioner Gordon role. The only issue there is Spider-Man and Captain Stacy just don't have that relationship that Batman and Commissioner Gordon have. At the end of the day though, I genuinely think Spider-Man is the perfect character for LEGO's next big superhero game. He has decades of stories, an unbelievable lineup of villains, 9 live-action movies once Brand New Day releases, amazing supporting characters, fantastic DLC opportunities, and if LEGO takes even a little inspiration from what made LEGO Batman Legacy of the Dark Knight so much fun, I think they can make one of the greatest LEGO games ever. But now, I want to hear from you. What would you want in a LEGO Spider-Man game? Who would you make playable? What villains would you include? And what DLC would you want to see? Leave all your ideas in the comments because I read every single one and I reply to all of them. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you guys all in the next video.